If you've noticed you've got a little bit of moisture underneath your rear trunk where the coolant tank is located, that could be an indication that your bleeder valve O-rings are starting to go bad. Now the good news is these parts are a couple dollars, very easy, and the repair takes maybe 30 minutes. There's only one trick I want to tell you about, more of a cautionary advice when doing this repair, because if you do mess up in this one step, what will happen is you'll have to replace your entire coolant tank. So let's get into it. So I noticed one time when I was checking the oil in the back that there was some condensation that had now started to arise underneath the rear trunk right where the coolant tank is located. And I was thinking, oh man, is my coolant tank starting to leak? Because that is a known failure point in these vehicles. That's like a $1,300 repair if you pay someone to do it. You can do it yourself, but from what I've heard, it is pretty intensive. You have to take everything out. Not probably crazy complicated. There's just a lot to take out to get to it. And if you don't put the new one in correctly or that cracks, you're doing it all over again. So that was what I thought could have been the problem. But then I did a little bit of research and it turns out the bleeder valve, which is located in there right behind the filler tubes for the oil and the coolant, does have these little O-rings. There's two of them. There's a bigger one and a smaller one. And if those start to just, not seal as properly, you can get some coolant leaking, which then will result in that like moisture or condensation under there. So I'm going to walk you through how to do it. I'll point some things out here with some video. I'm not going to actually take it completely apart and replace the O-rings and show you the O-rings, but I can get you far enough to where you definitely can do it from this video alone. Or if you want to really see exactly what it looks like, go ahead and Google another video and you can kind of see how to do it. First, you're going to obviously pop your rear trunk, and then you need to get the black cover that is covering your coolant tank out of the way. So the first thing you're going to do is you want to take off your oil cap and your coolant cap. And then you can use either a trim tool or a screwdriver to start to pry out that piece of plastic that covers the top of your coolant tank. Now you can also pull this rubber piece off if you want. We did, and I can show you how that works here. Once you get this little piece off, and it's a little tricky, but you can get it, take that off, and then what you're going to want to do is put either the caps back on your oil or your coolant, or put a rag or something in there, because the last thing you want to do while you're doing this repair is drop something into the oil filler tube or the coolant area. So from here, you will see the bleeder valve. So there's a little metal tab that's going to be sideways, and you're going to go ahead and just flip that up. And then you need to remove these screws that are on the valve itself. And I believe it's a 7mm hex. And you're just going to carefully by hand start to unscrew these bolts. And once you pull those out, you'll be able to remove the top portion of the bleeder valve. Now, you still have to remove the next piece to get to the actual rings, little O-rings. And that part's a bit trickier. You have to get some sort of a tool. You can use a screwdriver or something else down at the very bottom, and there's actually a seam. You can barely see it and barely feel it. But if you can get down in there, you have to start to work that seam out. It's pretty tight and it's kind of a pain, and you just have to slowly work it out. It's tricky. It kind of gets stuck, but once it starts to come, it'll just pop off. So just be prepared. And then once you get that piece off, underneath that piece, there's going to be a smaller O-ring like centered at the very top, and then you're going to have the larger one. But I believe we used silicone. I'll put it on screen if I'm incorrect, but I'm pretty sure we used a little bit of silicone on the rubber, and that just helps, create a good seal. So you rub some silicone on the two rings, put them back in, and then what you're going to do is you're going to put this piece back in by the coolant tank. Now, I would say before you do all of this, I would clean up around the area. I had little pink splotches of coolant residue that had kind of like just formed around in the area, which is one of my indications that this was happening. And so I just, took a wet towel and cleaned all that out. So once you start putting this back in, You get the bottom piece back in, make sure it's tight and there's no space on the bottom there. It's mated in there perfectly. And now this is where the tricky part comes and you don't want to mess up. You're going to put these screws back in, but when you tighten them, use a hand tool. Don't use any kind of an electric drill or anything like that, because what's going to happen is if you tighten them too tight, and it's very easy to do, you will snap the head off of these and you will not be able to get them out and you'll have to replace your entire coolant tank. So again, it's one of these situations where a simple fix for the problem can turn into a large problem if you're not careful. So just use a hand tool, go around, and we actually tried to sort of find the threading that was already there. So we were reusing that same threading versus rethreading, because it's just going into plastic, I believe. So it just was like a self-tapping screw basically to start with. And so if you can find that, I think most of them we found it. Some of them it felt like it sort of was biting a new groove, and that was fine. So we got those to go in. I just really very slightly snugged them all up. And kind of like when you're doing a tire with lug nuts, I just sort of did a little star pattern just slowly. And then again, it's by feel, so it's hard to explain, but you really just have to be really careful. You're just sort of just tightening it and just barely tightening. And if it feels like it's just not really giving anymore, leave it alone. And you can always go back around and see if any are loose. But that's really all you want to do there. So after you get those screwed back in, you go ahead and snap that puppy down on the top, that metal piece, just snap it back to where it was. I think you can go either direction, it doesn't matter. And then go ahead and put the plastic piece back in. If you put your caps on, your coolant, your oil, you'll have to take this off, of course, first, then put the plastic piece on, then put the caps back on. And then you can just put that little rubber trim piece, if you took that off, it's just easy to just slide, it just pushes right on. And you should be set. And in a few weeks after you've done this repair, or in a few days, if you've driven it a couple times, you can go ahead and pull those caps off, take the plastic piece off again and just get an eye in there and see. But if you're not seeing any residue above, I have to say it solved the problem for me. So I have not seen any condensation. It's been about a month now. And I still haven't gone in there. I want to clean off that black residue that's underneath the trunk, if it'll come off, which is where that rubber gasket mates against the bottom lid of the trunk. But yeah, it was a really simple repair. I want to say it was, like I said, $1.54 or something for one of the little O-rings. Maybe it was a couple dollars more, but probably the most affordable part you could get. And I get most of my parts from Pelican Parts, so I always recommend them. They're a great resource for Porsche parts. So that's where I would go, and hopefully this helped you. It's a super simple thing to do, can solve that problem, and it's a great place to start before you go replacing the entire coolant tank.